Rain was the theme in the Atlantic in Week 6 as all but 4 games were washed out. In the South, the Atlanta Lightning split points twice, clinching first place for the first time. Atlanta Fire defeated Baltimore on Friday night and then split points with Baltimore for Saturday's washout to put them 3 points up and close out their regular season campaign. This sets up an all-or-nothing weekend for Morrisville and Fort Lauderdale at Broward County Stadium this coming weekend. The Raptors need to win both games to advance on run rate, while the Lions can afford to lose once. In the East, the Philadelphians were unable to clinch first after splitting points with Empire State on Saturday and losing their first game to New England Eagles on Monday in a rain-shortened game. All 6 teams in the East have played 8 games, and none of them are statistically eliminated from the race, though Manhattan has an unreasonable net run rate gap to close. Third place will likely come down to Somerset, New England, and Empire State, with Somerset holding a net run rate edge and closing out the season against the Yorkers and the Philadelphians. Empire State and New England Eagles closed the season out with 2 head-to-head matchups at Glenville, both teams holding their fate in their own hands. Philly faced second-place Stallions and third-place Cavs to try and clinch, and New Jersey Stallions closed it off on Sunday against the last-place Yorkers, effectively giving the Philadelphians 2 must-win games to keep their spot at the top of the table. Atlantic Batter of the Week for Week 6 is Supreet Madan of the Empire State Titans with 55 runs from 29 balls to keep his team in playoff contention. Atlantic Bowler of the Week is Supreet's teammate Sean Tennakoon, who took 3 big wickets, yielding just 12 runs in 3 overs. The Pacific Batter of the Week for Week 6 is once again Corey Anderson of the Dallas Mustangs with 82 runs at a strike rate of .228. The Pacific Bowler of the Week for Week 6 is East Bay's Angelo Pereira, who took 6 wickets at an economy of 3.88. Emerging Player of the Week for Week 6 is Mohit Patel of the Chicago Tigers, who took 2 wickets for 15 runs in 4 overs. Coming up, we have Nitish Kumar of the Lone Star Athletics and West Division correspondent Joe Hickey. But first, I want to remind you to buy your tickets for the minor league cricket final at Grand Prairie Stadium on October 1st. Just visit the URL on your screen and in the description of this video to purchase tickets. 4 teams in the Central will move on to the postseason following this final week of regular season action. The Lone Star Athletics are currently 1 point out and play a rival in Houston Hurricanes this weekend to try and advance. Here to talk with me tonight is Lone Star's star batter, Nitish Kumar. Nitish, thanks for joining me. It's great to have you on finally. I feel like I've wanted to get you on now for a while. I've been going for 3 years, so it's about time.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It's nice to be on.
You've really come alive this season with your bat in minor league cricket. Heading into this season, you had 29 innings of minor league cricket without a half century. Now, obviously, you still had good average numbers. Your average was high. Your strike rate was pretty good. You were doing your job. And in T20 cricket, 50s, half centuries and centuries don't matter as much as just winning the game. But you have converted 3 times this season into half centuries. What do you chalk that up to?
Yeah, I think a lot of different things. I think the first year I played pretty well, but it's like those sort of stuff you won't see on the statistics. Like I think the first year we were chasing quite a bit. There were quite a lot of low totals. The pitches weren't as great. And I was actually getting the 40s, and I had quite a few not outs the first year. So like the stats don't really show exactly what was going on. So the first year I actually had a pretty good year. I was almost at 450 runs without a 50.
Right.
But that's just the circumstances of us chasing a lot of low totals and a lot of not outs and stuff like that. I think I had a pretty bad year last year. It just couldn't really get anywhere with the batting. And I guess this year it's a bit different. I'm opening. I haven't opened in a long time. I remember when I first debuted for Canada, that's when I used to open. And then I moved to number 3, number 4. I enjoyed the challenge of sort of setting the pace of the innings and just being an anchor and being able to adapt according to the situation of the team and putting myself in a difficult place where you could succeed. Whereas this year, just with the makeup of the team and the guys that we got this year, it just fit that I go back up top. And to be honest, we just been batting first quite a bit. So it's just given the opportunity to sort of bat longer, set up totals. And when you're batting first on pretty good wickets, you get the opportunity, especially through the power play, to really get a mark. And I guess that's just what's the difference is. I do feel I'm batting pretty well. it didn't feel like that for about a year before this. It's been it was pretty tough going. I guess I was trying a bit too hard trying to get out of a patch, but it's just one of those that as athletes, as a batter, you just get in there. I think it was about a year and a half. It would have been where I could have told you that I wasn't probably comfortable with my batting. I wouldn't have been confident going into any game. Yeah, I did bat well here and there, but I wouldn't say I was in control of my batting, and it feels like it's on the right track. I don't still feel that I'm all the way there, but it's felt pretty good this year. And that's quite nice because I think it's very important for people like us, like athletes, especially cricket, which is if you're doing badly or if you do well. It's not like a game like soccer where you're like, oh, I still had an average game. You've either had a good game or you didn't really contribute, and it's
Right.
right there to tell you. So I think, yeah, the difference between the conversion of scores has probably just been more of the circumstances of batting first and playing on good wickets and opening the batting. Yeah, 26 games without 50. That's must be some sort of record. I'm not too proud of that one. So
No, that's okay, man. It's as we said, it's T20 cricket, sometimes you get in the 40s, and that was good enough. And your team right now has really relied on this production from you. You're one of the league leaders in runs this season, 284 runs already in 7 innings, an average of 40.57, a strike rate of 130.28, which is your best so far in minor league cricket. That's a very good strike rate for an opener. So your team has definitely relied on this. Your team's net run rate is pretty just above average, pretty much 0.1655, and you're 4-3 with 4-3 with one no result, and just teetering on the edge there of making it into the postseason. This weekend, as I mentioned before, you have 2 games against a rival Houston Hurricanes, who are 3-5. Now, just like last season, I don't think this record of theirs reflects how good of a team they really are.
yeah, I haven't been following. I'm not the one to follow other games too much. That's not me. Like I'd probably be oblivious to a few of the other games, but a few of the boys follow it. And yeah, I've been having a look, and I could probably say there's 2 games that we thought like, oh, that's a pretty easy win for them, and they haven't won. So like, I guess just looking at their standings, it looks pretty bad, but I don't think it was that bad. They could have easily probably had 4 more points, 4 to 6 more points, and that's a different ball game. So we as a team are definitely not taking this weekend lightly. But I think the one thing that is in our favor is that we've played well at Musa, and we know if we have a good outing the first day, that always helps when you have a doubleheader. Is you just go into the second game with a bit more positivity. But we're definitely not taking anything lightly. We know how hard it is to win. If you looked at those standings before last weekend, we were pretty happy where we were with a couple games ahead. So it's just important to know how important every weekend is. And for us, I think the equation is if we win 1, we're still hoping on other teams to win and lose. Whereas if we win 2, I think we're pretty safe. So definitely not taking the weekend lightly. I know they're a strong team out there, but I think it's more about worrying about doing our job. I think we're still in a pretty all you want to be is you want to be in a position where you could get into the next round. And I think we've put ourselves in that position without even playing a full game. I don't think we've played one game well in terms of batting and bowling and putting everything together in a single game. So it could be a negative thing, or you could look at it as a positive that, oh, if we do put a game together here, this is a great weekend to get 2 wins in, and then you're almost on a roll going into the playoffs, which is exactly what you want. You want to sort of peak at the right time. So it could go either way, but we're definitely confident about the weekend.
And you've got a handful of major leaguers on the team with you this season. Shayan Jahangir, who performed pretty well. He actually had a long leash in the major league season. Considering it's a 5-game season, the major league regular season. He started off a little slow, and he came around at the end, and he became a big contributor for a team that won the whole thing. And you got Ranjani on the team, Nitish Kumar. You've got some very good players on this team that have had this experience. What do you think that has helped a lot this season with this team? The fact that you have these stars who've gotten this extra, high level experience.
Yeah, I definitely feel like if you look at our team from last year and this year, there was a bit of quality lacking in the middle, and you just need few more guys that are game changers. I think T20 cricket, it's all about guys that could win games for you,
Right.
and I think we addressed that this year. Obviously, we've lost a few games and different reasons for all those losses, but I think just having guys, knowing there's different guys that could win you a game on any given day is a pretty positive thing. Whereas if you go into a game and you have one or two guys that could win you a game, opposed to four or five guys, just makes it a bit more confident going into games. And I guess that's another reason where not like in any way, whereas like myself, I could bat a bit more freer, knowing the guys that are coming behind me, knowing they could obviously contribute in a big way. So there's probably a bit less pressure on guys like me and Shine up top, where we're almost like, okay, we just play freely here because we got a couple lads at the behind us that will just, if anything goes wrong, they're always there. So there's always a big help to that, and they're great to have on the team. They're very intense sort of cricketers, and that's what you need, right?
Yeah. I see. We see Milind Kumar's strike rate 136.73. That's what you're going to expect from Milind Kumar, regardless of where he's playing. But the interesting thing to me is Ranjani, he's batting long for you guys. And this kind of speaks to his versatility, the roles that he's played in his time in the USA, both in minor league and in major league. In major league, he was a finisher. He had to come in, he'd see maybe 10, 15 balls, and he had to put them all away. And he did a really great job of that in major league for the Seattle team. And right now for you guys, he's got 3 not outs in 5 innings, and he's averaging 71. So he's going the distance for you guys, and that's got to be, I mean, that speaks a lot to his versatility, doesn't it?
Yeah, and I'm also a firm believer that even though someone's a fin, if he's one of your top batters, you give them as much time as possible, depending on the circumstances of the game, to score big. And he's been amazing. I just don't think he's probably had the help he needs to finish the games off that we've lost at the bottom. It's partly on us, the guys batting up top. But I think he's been awesome, and I think those type of innings he's been playing, guys don't talk about it enough, maybe because we've been losing. If that's on the other foot and we're winning those games, those are very important innings for us. So he's been playing amazing. Millen's been playing amazing as well, and we know they have another gear, so that's pretty good to look for. So if they get into a different gear, that you never know what happens.
And I noticed this season you haven't bowled as much. You made a name for yourself internationally as an all-rounder with Canada. You were the captain of Canada for some time. But yes, you were known as an all-rounder. And now you're pretty much a batsman on this team. Yes, you've bowled a few overs, but nothing what we're used to seeing from you. What's the reason for that? Like I said, you're a captain. You have a captain's mind. You understand if this is a tactical reason, or what the reasoning is behind this. Is there a reason for the fact that you're not bowling as much this year?
I wouldn't know the answer to that, but I could definitely say that I would like to bowl. Like there's no reason that I don't want to bowl. That's not coming from my side. But I think tactically, I think we did address our bowling, and then we did get a few more bowlers. And to be honest, the pitches that we played on Musa, and they haven't really been supporting sort of spin as much as it usually does. Um, and the type of way of bowl, I really looked for some assistance off the pitch. So I don't think it's been that suitable for me. And to be honest, it's not about getting to bowl every game. It's just for me, it's more about my bowling's more about if I'm needed, I just got to make sure I'm ready to go. And to be honest, I don't think this year, even if I was captaining, just the way the pitch has been playing, and the circumstances that we've been in each game with the type of batters that have been there and stuff. Um, we just I don't think it was necessary for me to bowl as much. I would like to, but that's just my input on it, and I think we've
Sure.
been doing pretty well. So
Right. But we saw in Major League a lot of off break bowlers. We see this in T20 at the higher levels all the time. A lot of off break bowlers are batters first, and come in and give you a few overs if there's lefties in the team, or so, depending on your particular style of bowling, matchup style. Is that kind of how you see yourself as a major league cricketer? Is that how you kind of project yourself in major league cricket in the future as a batter who can give you some overs in the right situation?
Yeah, I definitely would definitely feel like I could give overs. I've bowled in the CPL. I bowled in the GT20. I'm pretty confident in my bowling, but I also know my shortcomings as a bowler. There's guys with so much variation now, and I think a bowl at any time. And I understand where my sort of setbacks in my bowling lie, but I definitely think that if I'm in a team, I could definitely offer that if they need, and if they don't need it, then it's not really a problem. But for me, it's just about having that option open more than me being like I need to bowl every game. It's just that option's there if it's needed by the captain, if it's needed by the team.
Right. Yeah, I mean, we see a lot of left-handed batters and bowlers in this country kind of dominating in minor league cricket. And so it's nice to have that foil for them.
Yeah, I
So,
think it's quite tough to pick someone that just bowls off spin. It's
yeah,
Yeah, it's like if a left arm spinner is different. I guess like everyone's batting nowadays, isn't it? It's quite hard to find someone that doesn't bat. So
sure.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah. When we're seeing the best spinners in the world, also brutal T20 batters.
yeah,
It's we're seeing, obviously Rashid Khan and Hasaranga. We saw some struggling too from some openers, some domestic openers in Major League Cricket. You getting this experience this season to kind of like open an awful lot. That's got to be a good thing too for you going forward, I believe. Expressing your versatility to major league teams in the future.
yeah. Like for me, I feel like I'm happy to. I feel like just how the game is, like you have to be open to batting wherever. And I've opened before. I batted three, I batted four, I batted five in leagues, and I'm pretty happy to to bat wherever is necessary. Obviously, like we all have our spots that we like to bat at, but um, I feel like being versatile and being able to bat in most positions is probably the key nowadays.
Right, right. So this coming weekend, this is where it all comes down to. We're going to have four teams from the Central make it into the postseason. Every other division's got three teams making it to the postseason, but every other division only has six players, and the Central has eight. I mean, sorry, has six teams. The Central has eight teams. So each division's sending 50% of their teams to the postseason. The Central's just sending one more and adding another round basically for the 4 versus 3. But currently you're in fifth place. You have two against the Hurricanes this weekend. The Kingsmen play the Michigan Cricket Stars for 2 games. You're only 1 point behind those two teams. So if you win one game and Michigan beats the Kingsmen twice, or the Kingsmen beat the Michigan twice, then you're in. And Dallas, the two Dallas teams, Dallas Mustangs at first place with 12 points, play 2 games against the Xforia Giants, who are in second place with 11 points. That's basically right now. It looks like that's the competition for first place. Of course, if they beat each other and Michigan or Chicago wins 2, then things get interesting. You get into net run rate and stuff, but it does. Dallas's Mustangs net run rate is pretty good advantage right now. There's a lot of really interesting matchups in the Central this weekend. Obviously, St. Louis is out now, and Chicago Tigers are out, both of them with 5 points each. What do you think about your chances this weekend advancing to the playoffs?
I think they're pretty good. I feel like I I mean we would love to be in the playoff spot already, but I just feel like the position we're in, we're playing at home. We're just and we're not playing against a team that's also like as if I don't know. I'm not gonna point out any teams, but I just feel like we're playing at home. We played well at home, and we're just hoping that the other teams, whoever wins the first game, just beats the team again the second game. That gives us an easier chance. But for us, it's about worrying about ourselves. And if I think if we win 2 games, we put ourselves in a pretty good position. Um, but that's all dependent on just doing the things right. We got to play well on Saturday, and we know that Sunday is going to be a difficult game as well. Depending on the conditions out there at PV, you just don't know what you get. So you just got to be switched on and ready to go.
Right. So
We're pretty confident if that's what you're asking. I think guys are really looking forward to the weekend. We had a bad one last weekend, but that's just how it goes. So we know. I mean, the best thing that we could say is that our destiny is basically in our own hands. If we win 2 games, we're through. So that's the best thing that you could get going through the weekend. I mean, it would have been worse if we were hoping that guys would have to beat this team and that team had to beat this team just for us to win 2 games and get in. That would have been a tricky situation. Whereas right now, we know if we just win 2 games and play our best cricket, then we're through. So we're looking forward to it.
That's honestly that was what I was expecting you to say. but yeah, and you got a great chance right now. You're in a really good position. Like you said, these other teams, all of these, even Houston, all of the teams that'll be playing each other this weekend are very good teams, and it's going to make for some very good cricket. And I'm looking forward to just to watching along and listening to the commentary and engaging myself in the context of all of this, and seeing what happens, seeing who comes out on top. Because like I said, we got 12 points, 11 points, 10 points, 10 points, 9 points, and that's 5 teams trying to get 4 spots. If this table could be flipped all over the place by Monday. So we will see how it works. As it has been all season, the Central's been really tough. The Mustangs come in probably as the favorites with a loaded team with 8 major league cricketers on the team. But they struggled early on, and now they bounced back, and they look like that dominant team that we expected. But every team is so good in this league, and so I'm looking forward to seeing what happens this weekend, Nitesh. It's great to chat with you about this. Thanks for joining me, and best of luck to you.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Thank you very much.
All right. Here to talk about the always tight West is Joe Hickey. Joe, how's it going out there in California?
I mean, crazy exciting, rainy for the first time ever during a minor league cricket match. And, but otherwise very pleasant. And we're pumped as heck for what looks to be a really exciting final weekend.
Well, it rained just about everywhere in minor league last season. Yeah. Last weekend, there were so many games washed out. I think there were only actually 3 games in the Atlantic that actually ended up transpiring. Right. So it's nice to not have rain very often out there in the West. And like you said, you still got the games in. So that's what really matters. And you have an incredibly interesting race out there. We have a couple of teams who are already out of the picture, though.
Yeah, San Diego Surf Riders and SoCal Lashings. San Diego very obviously out because their record have got the 3 wins and can't get any more. SoCal looks to the untrained eye like they're still alive at the moment in 3rd place, but the issue is that either Golden State or Seattle is going to eclipse them or tie them. They might all end up tied at 4 and 6, and the way the net run rates shake out, there's no way that SoCal can finish first. So those two, yes, they've had their season come to an end, both in terms of they've played all 10 of their games, and they're not going to go any further than that.
You've got East Bay at the top of the table, Silicon Valley Strikers in 2nd place. Although they haven't been maybe as dominant in previous seasons, it doesn't look like it's going to take the typical 1 or 2 losses out of 14, 15, 16 right. games, to make it into the playoffs in the West. There's a little more forgiveness this season.
Yeah, well, and it should be really exciting here. We've got this matchup between East Bay and Silicon Valley to finish off this regular season, battling for that automatic qualifier spot to go to the Super 8s in Texas. So that's going to be a really intense battle. Those two last season played a pair of amazing games. One of them, Silicon Valley managed to win right there at the death by defending, I believe it was 5 off the final over. And then the other one, East Bay punched him back in the mouth for the only loss they took all regular season. So right. Can't be more excited than that for that game.
Well, luckily for East Bay this season, there aren't going to be any final weekend scenarios which knock them out of the playoffs.
Yeah,
they clinched the spot this year. They can collapse all they want to right now if that's what happens. I don't think they will. I don't think any smart person is going to think they're going to totally collapse this weekend. So East Bay has Golden State, and then they have Silicon Valley Strikers twice. And then Silicon Valley Strikers have, of course, East Bay 2 times. So East Bay has a better chance right now in terms of they have 1 game in hand on Silicon Valley Strikers.
That's right, yeah. And really for them, the game against Golden State isn't going to make a whole lot of difference. They're either going to go into those 2 games with Silicon Valley up a game in the standings, or level with Silicon Valley, but ahead on net run rate. So either way for them, as long as they don't like win a close one and then get obliterated in the other game, as long as they take one of the two against Silicon Valley, they should take first place in the division. Silicon Valley needs to sweep that pair regardless of what happens between the Grizzlies and the Blazers on Friday.
Seattle is in the hunt right now. They got 2 games against Golden State Grizzlies, correct?
That is right. And so for this one, that Golden State East Bay result will matter because Golden State will either win that game and be a game ahead of Seattle, and they would just need a split to qualify, or they lose it, they're tied with Seattle, and now the Thunderbolts have the advantage on net run rate, and now the Thunderbolts can go through if they split the pair. So in either case, if it's a sweep for one team or the other, that's the team that's going to go through in the third place spot. But you do have some interesting scenarios based on that Friday result in terms of who's going to have the upper hand going in and could afford a loss.
Let's talk a little bit about last weekend and how we got here.
Well, last weekend we had basically a pair of double headers. The Southern California teams visiting the Bay Area teams at the Morgan Hill Outdoor Sports Complex. Started out with a pair of honestly not particularly compelling games on Saturday. The first one involving East Bay and San Diego was interesting for a bit. First off, you had the return of Saideep Ganesh, and he paired up with David White, that amazing opening partnership from 2022, and they picked up right where they left off last year, 72 off 54, and looked to be away in that one. I think they had 77 runs at the end of the fifth or of the 10th over with 1 wicket down. And with a team like East Bay, there you see that, you're thinking you guys are getting 200. And so it was a really encouraging thing for the Surf Riders that they managed to pull it back a little bit. They took 5 wickets in the last 7 overs. Guy and Fernando had 3 of them. And they managed to hold East Bay to just barely doubling that total through 10 overs. And if you can, with just 1 wicket down, you can keep them at the same run rate for the next 10, you feel pretty good about that.
You mentioned Guy and Fernando taking 3 wickets. He's had an amazing season.
Oh, yeah.
Big bright spot for San Diego this year with, I think he's pacing the entire Pacific. He's going to, barring an incredible weekend from somebody, he's going to finish this season out as the leading bowler in the West Division.
Yeah, and a heck of an import from SoCal Lashings. I don't know that his performance last year gave us a sense of that we were going to see something like this out of him this season, but right from the get-go, they've been using him at the power play and at the death chiefly, but he now, I believe, has 4 wickets in 2 overs in the middle, so it just doesn't matter where you bowl him. He's going to take wickets. He's going to keep a pretty decent tight economy. And yeah, he's been absolutely one of the giant bright spots for that team. The only problem on Saturday was that they managed to pull that total back. It looked like they had something they could work with, and then just the lights went out when they came out to hit. Just 80 runs. They did bat out all 20 overs, lost 9 wickets, and really the only guy who had a decent day with the stick was Abhinay Reddy, who has been another one of the big bright spots for San Diego. He has gotten his average up into the 20s with the bat, has been great with the ball, and we've seen already several times his fielding highlighted on the minor league cricket plays of the week. It's going to happen again pretty soon.
Oh yeah, he's been a revelation this season. I think prior seasons he only bowled a total of 8 overs. This season, I think he bowled close to 24 total overs. As far as playing as a team goes and playing for your team goes, I've been incredibly impressed by what I've seen this season from San Diego. They've been a team that yes, okay, sure, they've had some really terrible innings with the bat this season, but when you watch them in the field, when you watch the way they support each other and the way they celebrate the many incredible catches that they make, it's a team that I like to watch, and kind of, you get excited for them. Plus they also have those great uniforms.
Oh yeah.
I talked to Marty Kane about it. He said he loves this group, and they're a bunch of great guys. And that's what he wants. This is the kind of team that they want to have out there. These guys look like they care.
Well, and they were the sort of team too where batting first really was the way for them. A lot of these Bay Area teams prefer to chase. They'd rather know what they need to get with the bat. San Diego was so much better this year when they would go in, bat first, put up whatever total they could, and then they knew what they had to bowl at, and they knew what they had to field at. And yeah, those games against Seattle in particular down in Canyon side were just breathtaking. The way that they would fight back and just kind of tooth and nail managed to keep themselves in those games late. Even the couple of losses they had when they batted first were not pushovers for the most part. They were in them right to the end.
That was probably this season my favorite pocket of cricket, was watching those games out there at Canyon side. And it's
and Abane Reddy took the number 2 play of the week with a catch, and honestly, I think it was his second best catch of the week.
Agree with you.
Used for it. They took his best one and used it in the promo for the minor league cricket final in Grand Prairie. I'm like, that's the one.
That's
full extension. Looking like Cedric Mullins out there.
Yeah. There we go. He was incredible. The thing about that first catch to me was the effort. Obviously it was an amazing catch. It wasn't the most graceful thing you've ever seen. It was what it was just will. It was raw will. And so it's the kind of catch that really gets you excited when you're like, that guy went out and made that catch happen. Like he chased that ball down and he did everything he could to catch that ball. It was, Marty Kane-esque, and we saw a couple of those from him as well. But yeah, so that I just wanted to spend a little bit of time giving San Diego their props. Their season is done, but they are a team that we're going to follow closely. And if they can add some batting to that team and address their batting issues, especially at the top of the order, to get the innings going.
The encouraging thing, and we'll talk about the Lashings as well in a second, but the Surf Riders and Lashings both kind of had games that were microcosms of the warts on their seasons on Saturday. And then on Sunday, you saw, okay, this is what these teams would look like if they could work out that piece of their game.
Right.
And we wound up with 2 amazing contests on Sunday that went down to the final over. Yeah, San Diego, you mentioned the batting issues, and particularly it started at the top for them. Their top 3 was averaging 41 runs as a group coming into the weekend, which is just not going to get it done. That number was down to 31 when they were starting 0-4, and it was 17 off 34 among the 3 of them on Saturday. So you see how that sort of situation develops. Right. On Sunday, they got 99 off 99 deliveries. They had a 61-run opening partnership. Hay picked up 30 in that one, and he had a 52 and a 49 among his last 6 innings too. And then on top of that, they get the start. They get a little bit quiet in the middle, and then all of a sudden at the end, Adit Gorawara and Sri Krishna Anantaraju provide that kick that they've been needing the whole season. 65 not out off 42 balls for their final partnership. And they put up something that's worthy of defending, that's worthy of that bowling attack they've had. And again, like we said, when they are able to see what's in front of them as bowlers, generally they're pretty nasty. They know what's necessary.
Yes, you've accomplished solving your problem for this day with the top order, but you still have to beat a very, very good team.
Yeah, and they did most of the things that have worked against Silicon Valley this year. Lahira Milantha gone for just 1 off Guy and Fernando's second over of work. And he's been a bellwether this season for them. Whenever he goes over 12 runs, they win. 4-0 in those situations. But coming into play, when he doesn't reach the 12-run mark, Silicon Valley was 1-2. And that one was that insane ending at Davis where they won with 4 byes in the final over and no runs off the bat. So they very nearly blew that one, almost 0-3 when he doesn't reach a dozen runs. They didn't have that big partnership that usually defines their victories either. Just a little like 20 here, 30 there. That was about all they were able to manage. And they got them, San Diego got Silicon Valley down to needing 47 off 24 to get the win. And then 31 off 16 after, go figure, an Abane Reddy to Greg Hay relay catch to dismiss Gary Graham. It looked at that point like they had this one in the bag.
Yes, but SVS bats are very deep. And, you see Shehan Jayasuriya is out. Butch is out. Jarawala is out. You mentioned before the top order with Lahiro being out. And yet you still have, and then Gary Graham, and then you still have Archibald and Ravi Singh.
Right. And Ravinderpal Singh in particular has been really important. His growth over the last couple of games, he started the season with 2 ducks. And we were starting to kind of wonder, like, all right, what do we have here? Looked good in the field, but wasn't doing much with the bat. But his last couple of games, he started to grab the bull by the horns. And 38 off 32 for him. Archibald with a 4 and a 6 off Dutta when they got to the point of needing, I think, 21 off 12. he hits those two boundaries, and all of a sudden we're down to a run a ball. And it's amazing how quickly that can change. And so really nice to see Ravi Singh getting into shape. We had lamented early in the season they didn't have the Roshan Primus, the Raymond Reefer, the guys that accompanied Graham. Now they're starting to feel it. Archibald was a fantastic acquisition. He's been a little expensive with the ball, particularly in the death overs. But man, what he adds to the bottom of that lineup, that's what Silicon Valley have hung their hat on really since the beginning of their existence.
Yeah, and we saw Archibald here last year in Morrisville, and he was finished a lot of games at the end. Similarly, it's 20 off 7 in this particular game. Not unusual batting performance from him here with the Raptors coming in late, scoring just a bunch of hurry up runs to put you right over the line. He partnered a couple of times with Obis at the end of an innings to win some really close games for very unlikely wins for the Raptors. Some of his innings were big parts of why the Raptors made the playoffs last year. So we know he can perform both with bat and ball in the clutch. This year he's come through more with the bat over in the West. But he is the type of bowler that even if he fails today, you can put him in the same spot tomorrow and he'll probably succeed.
Yeah, the old goldfish memory. Like he may be a closer with the bat, but he's got the pitcher closer sort of mindset for sure.
Exactly. That's what you need in the death. You need that, and there are a few guys who have that kind of ability to do that in the league. Shadley Van Schalkwijk is one of those, and obviously Archibald here, another one.
Yeah, and I mean, I think we saw on display there and in the second game on Sunday as well. I had a chat after the games with Gary Graham, and just about that idea of like teams that kind of come out and they've got enough experience with winning that things tend to go right for them. They're always going to be pressing. They seem to find that extra edge. And in San Diego and SoCal, you've got a pair of teams that are fighting a bit of recent history and trying to find that gear, trying to figure out how do we win these close games. For that matter, Seattle Thunderbolts, with as many new players as they have had that kind of issue. They lost 3 games in a row between East Bay and the 2 San Diego matches where they lost on the final ball. And you just sort of feel at that point, like, my goodness, what do we have to do to get over the line here?
Right.
I think SoCal and San Diego are looking for, perhaps those first victories that really are going to convince them they can make it happen. San Diego got a little bit of that in Canyon side. SoCal still waiting for it a bit.
Yeah, and of course, Golden State, because they have that history of, yes, they missed the playoffs last year, okay? But the year before, they went all the way to the conference final. So they have that history to reach back on. When you have that going for you, you don't panic early in the season when you have a bad start, and you don't get too high on yourself when you have a good start. And that's really, really important.
Yeah, and we'll be seeing those two teams head-to-head battling for that last playoff spot this coming weekend, and that should be an awful lot of fun. If we get a close game, though, I was thinking to myself, I don't even know who wins that one, given the issues they've both had closing out games. Is it just somebody needs 2 off 1, Kakani's running in, and we just the drought here in California ends in one fell swoop. We get a biblical flood, and we never get to find out who the third playoff team is. I mean, who knows? It reminds me of when the Indians and the Cubs played in the World Series, and they had the rain delay at the tied 9th inning, and I'm just sitting there laughing to myself, like, oh, clearly, like, the universe can't allow either of you to be World Series champions. That's the vibe I get a little bit from this, but somebody's going to figure it out this weekend.
Yeah, the world hopefully doesn't end, and somebody figures it out this weekend. But yeah, it's SoCal needed to win last weekend to stay alive. East Bay had to win last weekend to stay in first. And that was a interesting matchup.
Yeah, SoCal was coming off of a really rough batting performance the day before, where they only put up 103 runs. Got a good start to the power play with the ball in hand, got a wicket on the third ball, and then a couple of dropped catches in the third over. And Malantha and Jayasuriya just put on a masterclass. And so, I had a chance to talk with some of the Lashings players after that, and they just kind of were like, we've got to just put that in the back of our mind, or push it to the back of our minds. And okay, everybody has a day like that. We need to come out here, and we've got this chance to put ourselves in a really good spot. And props to them, particularly for after all of that, recovering from losing Reuben Clinton, the leading scorer in the Western Division, on the second legal ball of the day from Carmine LaRue.
What a ball!
Well, what a ball! And there were also some demons on that side of the wicket. There were a couple of balls that stayed real low. That was how Jayasuriya got dismissed. I actually spoke to Clinton right before the game, and he was telling me that they knew that side of the wicket was where they were going to have to noodle it around, take their singles and their doubles, and then try to swing for the fences from the opposite side. Because it was just doing some real voodoo over on that side of the pitch. After that loss of Reuben Clinton, they needed somebody to put their hand up. That's a spot where a team that's come off of a really disappointing performance the prior day could just crumble. This time it was Harpreet Singh, and Harpreet was back on his 2021 form, and doing so on one leg. He had a little ankle turn about 30 minutes pre-game, had to get wrapped up. You could see on the video feed, did not look himself trying to get back and forth between the wickets, but I think it just let him kind of stand and deliver. And he said, we're not worried about trying to take quick singles or anything like that. We're hitting boundaries. And he did it with aplomb and picked up his first half century since the last day of 2021.
He had that partnership with Kalacharan to get, to start things off.
Yeah, that got them rolling. They did lose 2 quick wickets in the 12th when Harpreet did finally finish. Ronal Patel went down moments later, but then Hutchinson and Timbawala picked it up. And Timbawala in from Hollywood Master Blasters, Elmore, the old reliable. And Hutchinson with 4 sixes en route to a 39. Together, they almost added a second 50 partnership to that innings. And then Timbawala at the end, a few 4s off of Rusty Theron to really put the finishing touches on it and give them a total in excess of 150.
Yeah, and these names though, the Harpreet, the Kalacharan, Hutchinson, Timbawala, this team has some good players in it. These are names that people know about domestically here in the USA.
And certainly at the beginning of this season, I looked at SoCal and then the kind of the mystery teams of Golden State, who we didn't know how they would approach things necessarily.
Right.
And Seattle, who just from a personnel standpoint were a lot of guys who'd never played in this league.
Yes. Or played together.
Right. And I looked at those as like, from those 3 teams, we're going to find third place. I think we talked about it pre-draft and even post-draft. Felt like East Bay's probably 1, Silicon Valley 2, and then the rest of this is just a mess. And who knows what's going to happen? And it's more or less played out that way. And it's been a really enjoyable thing to kind of see the ebbs and flows. SoCal took the reins early. Looked like Seattle was pretty good. They managed to split their games against the Bay Area teams up in Seattle, but then they fall apart down in San Diego for a little while. Golden State starts horribly, but they managed to resurrect their season. So it's been such a great back and forth over the course of 2 months here to get to the point where we're at now.
Right. And I feel like some of these teams are just a couple of pieces away from really pushing for that playoff spot. The ones that are missing out now. Obviously now we're between Golden State and Seattle right now for that third place, which is kind of, early in the season, I kind of thought Golden State had the upper hand. We didn't see Vatsal a lot last year. Yes, they're missing players, but they're going to have Vatsal, and he's performed really well for them.
Continuing to look at that Lashings Blazers game, we did that total of 155 to be defended. Lashings got themselves off to a good start. Ayan Desai for the second time that weekend, and the third time in 4 games against Bay Area teams, took a wicket with his third delivery. It's almost uncanny. He's now gotten Butch Milantha and now Sadeep Ganesh that way. He's been so
good. He's been so good. In the most important time is to start the game. You want to start the game on the right foot.
Yeah. Although East Bay then, very similarly to Lashings, rebounded from that early wicket and put on a 50-run stand. Sanjay Krishnamurthy this time with David White. Sanjay, a really interesting innings of soaking up pressure for a while. I believe he had 4 byes on the first ball, 4 leg byes on the first ball he faced, but no runs off the bat for the first 11. And just soaking it up, and then gets his first boundary and goes for 27 off his next 16. And so it comes off looking like a run a ball 27. You're like, oh, just noodle it around, right? It's like, no, nothing for a while, and then boom, 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 boom. So very, very unusual innings, but kind of Sanjay's style, I think. White, on the other hand, steady as you like.
Right. Well, we know that he's capable of multiple modes and multiple gears.
Right. And of course, Pereira's now back. And so after they did lose a few wickets in the middle, he comes in and you get a captain's knock out of him as well, 34 off 25, one gigantic six. And just the whole way through this match, through this second innings, the Worms, we kept putting it up on the screen at Morgan Hill because they were snuggling. Like it was one team would be up 2 from it, then down 1, then down 3, then up 2, and then down 1. It was just back and forth every over within this very narrow margin. And it got to the point of, again, this 21 needed off 12. They had Hamza Tariq in there, who's got experience already winning a game at the death for this team. And for the first time, really, we saw somebody take Sanchit Sandhu to the cleaners. We talked about him early when we were kind of discussing this before we got on the air. And right. And he has been so economical. An 8.5 economy last year for SoCal. He's knocked that down into the low 4s this season. Just incredible. Unreal control. And I think bold against the right kinds of batters for him to be successful. So for the first time, we saw somebody really get at him. They bowled him in the death for the first time all year. And Tariq knocked off 10 with a couple of boundaries. But it still came down to that last over. SoCal continuing to pull back and forth. They picked up a wicket on the 4th to last delivery, got rid of the new guy, CP Rizwan. And it looked really good for them. 3 balls to go. Rusty Theron on strike. He needs to get off strike, you think, in order to allow them to get through this. And instead, a 2 that's a bit of comical rough fielding, another 2 that's just well worked, and then they bring the infield in, and Rusty goes over everybody, bets on himself with the scores level, and hits a 4 to put them into the playoffs officially and to knock out SoCal.
Yeah, great stuff from Rusty. And we saw him in the Ball and Play League from John Boy, and he was batting incredibly well in that. And I joked with him. He on one of my social posts, he said that he reaches back to that experience when he needs to hit. Of course, he's joking, but yes.
Well, I had a lovely little chat with him afterwards because he walked by at some point after the game, and I just looked at him and said, "Rusty, so you hit boundaries now?" and we were joking because the Seattle video feed cut out the game where he hit his first ever minor league cricket 6. And I told him how upset I was because I was like, "Oh, I bet it was majestic." He's like, "Well, I don't want to intimidate anybody, so it's nice that it wasn't there. So we do this in the dark." So
yeah, Rusty's got a great sense of humor. He's very capable with the bat. So it's nice to see him finish the game there for and help East Bay. What we've said in the past, they've always fallen just short, and they had a chance last weekend to just put all doubt out of question, and that's what they did. That's what Rusty did for them, and so that's big runs. In the big picture of that franchise, those are some big runs. And yes, it's a team they should have beaten probably, but in the big picture of that franchise, a big moment.
Absolutely. And you said it best. Cruelly left out of the postseason 2 years running. And the last thing they wanted was to have any doubt going into the final week, because that is just not historically panned out well for them.
Right, exactly. So now they're over that. Now they got to fight for first place. Let's talk about what this means for everybody, what this past weekend means for the playoff picture going forward.
Yeah, so that East Bay Silicon Valley matchup, which is going to be in Santa Clara, there was some back and forth about whether it might end up in Davis, but it does appear it's going to be Santa Clara. For East Bay, 1 win most likely gives them the division crown. It would be the 3rd different division champion in this division over these 3 years, which is kind of interesting considering how dominant certain clubs have felt. Right. No one's repeated yet. Silicon Valley does still have that chance though if they can pick up a sweep, and they are 3-1 all time against East Bay. I think I'm really interested to see how East Bay manages their bowling this week, because we have seen teams hold their left arm spinners out of the attack repeatedly against Silicon Valley. Lahira Milantha and Shahan Jayasuriya are just destroying left arm spin. We saw Golden State leave Vagella out of the attack for 11 overs the first time they faced off. I was really interested to see if they would change course on that the second game, but then they got Milantha for a 7-ball duck, and they're like, "Oh, okay, Vagella in." We never found out what they would have done otherwise.
Right.
Lashings, same thing. They left out Raina and Mrinal Patel, who had been very good for them because of that concern. And finally, they did put in Mrinal towards the end of the chase as it was getting away, and Milanta hit him for 3 sixes, and you kind of said, all right, well, yep, there's exactly what we were worried about.
Right.
So East Bay have gotten a lot of good run out of Sanjay Krishnamurthy and Angelo Pereira. I'm really fascinated to see how they're going to deal with it. Are we going to see a lot more of Hari Krishna Nair? Does it influence the decisions, even in terms of team selection, about how you set up your bowlers for that? And it does make it extra critical if your pacers can knock Milanta over early. You take advantage of that bellwether thing, and you can get those two involved a little bit more safely in the attack.
That's one of the great things about these lefty batters. One of the strengths in our country is a left arm orthodox spin, and when you turn that player who you typically count on for 4 overs every innings, when you turn him into a part timer, and the other matchup that has a ton of playoff implications here is Golden State versus Seattle. This is a really big one right here.
Absolutely. I mean, it's definitely the proverbial win or go home. East Bay and Silicon Valley, their season continues no matter what. It's just a question of whether they get to skip a week and go to Texas. Golden State and Seattle have some interesting recent history. Seattle took Golden State to the woodshed up in Seattle last year in the final weekend in order to pass East Bay in net run rate and just chase down a couple 100-run totals in 7 or 8 overs.
Right.
This season, Golden State maybe a chance to get a little bit of revenge for having to be made to play that role in that particular drama.
Right.
But yeah, it's going to come down in part to what happens on Friday. Golden State, if they can win that game against East Bay, all they'll need is 1 win over Seattle to get that done. If they do lose to East Bay, they're going to need to sweep both games, or they're going to need to absolutely wallop Seattle in one of them so that they can overturn the net run rate deficit there, which I suppose would be a poetic way to go about it if they did.
So who's going to win between these two? Who's going to win a tight game between these two teams?
Oh boy. I mean, like I said, they both have a recent history of losing heartbreakers. Golden State, they had their last over loss to Silicon Valley, that finished off 2021 and let the Silicon Valley Strikers into the playoffs. And, you talked before about Golden State recently being that season being a Pacific Conference finalist. I'm sure they would have preferred not to see Silicon Valley in that. They had the Nawaz Khan game back in Davis in 2021 or 2022 rather, the 2 byes game earlier this year. Seattle had those 3 in a row that they lost on the final delivery. So yeah, I mean, the easy prediction is nobody's allowed to win. The rains fall and we just send Silicon Valley and East Bay to Texas, but somebody's going to get it. We're still going to have this happen. I don't foresee an earthquake or a biblical flood. The forecast looks pretty clear for Sunday in Santa Clara. And so it should be a really good time.
Well, there is a scenario where that does happen, where games get washed out. They just, then next weekend you have either Silicon Valley or East Bay playing the number 3 team. That gets washed out, and then you do just have the 1 and 2 sent directly to Texas. So it is possible.
Well, all of that would require water to fall from the sky in California, and we know how that goes.
Which might be more likely in some ways than Golden State or Seattle coming through in the clutch, apparently.
Well, we'll see. I think you can look at it one of 2 ways. Either they have a history of really struggling at the end, or boy howdy, is at least one of them due. And somebody needs that moment. I really thought that Harish Kakani over at the end of the game up in Davis against Silicon Valley was going to be them chasing this all away. And at least 3 times on the final delivery, I thought this was them chasing it all away. And then somehow, boy, oh boy, just it breaks your heart, even if you're a neutral at some point. You say, True. I just want to see these guys express themselves and be successful.
Well, these are 2 teams I really like. I really like the people who run the teams. I really like the teams themselves, the players. I love talking to players from both of these teams. There are a lot of absolute studs on this team, and obviously I'm just joking about how neither of these teams can come through in the clutch. I think we're going to see something come right down to the end, and somebody's gonna do something spectacular to win the game between one of these 2 teams, and then they're gonna launch into the next week into the playoffs with that momentum behind them.
Absolutely.
So
and of course, And of course, they're going to be facing a team that lost their opportunity to go straight to Texas the prior week. So
exactly,
you really do have that emotional sort of push and pull. And I mean, we saw from San Diego and Canyon side, when you've been a team that's been snake bitten and found just agonizing ways to lose, when you do finally break through, it is a party.
It's a party.
And every one of those games that they had, bowling out Golden State, managing to restrict Shadley to 2 when they needed 4 on the final ball,
right?
Catching Jagrup Rana in the deep. Every one of those was just absolute delight, absolute ecstasy of victory in those moments. And I think we're going to see something like that this weekend.
So your prediction this weekend?
My prediction is I think East Bay's got the upper hand on Silicon Valley. I think at least once they manage to get through the openers and pick up the victory, and more importantly for them, deliver that third loss to Silicon Valley that makes them the team that heads to Texas. If I'm looking at Golden State and Seattle, I've seen the closing batting of Shadley Van Schalkwijk enough times now to feel like that is going to be a big turn. I think that series ends up being a split because he gets hot on one of them and takes them through a chase. And so it is going to kind of come down in that case to the Golden State East Bay game that's on Friday. I think on that one, East Bay having maybe their foot off the gas pedal a little bit. Golden State gets that. Grizzlies end up in the playoffs just by a hair.
The West is always a thrill. And Joe, you're always a gem. You follow this so well, and you give us such a good, clear picture of what's happened and what we can expect. And so I appreciate you joining me today.
Oh, my pleasure. And I look forward to being on the call and helping all of us process emotionally, statistically, whatever happens this weekend.
Well, I would look forward to watching you. Thank you.
Take care.